Chapter 14. Sir Isaac Newton. On Christmas Day, in the year 1642, Isaac Newton was born at the small village of Woolsthorpe in Lincolnshire. Isaac's father was dead. So, Mrs. Newton got married again to a clergyman. Her son was left to the care of his good old grandmother. However, not a very bright scholar, Isaac was remarkable for his ingenuity in all mechanical occupations. He had a set of little tools and saws of various sizes manufactured by himself. With the aid of these, Isaac contrived to make many curious articles. He seemed to have been born with a saw or chisel in his hand. Some of his friends, no doubt, advised Isaac's grandmother to apprentice him to a clockmaker, for besides his mechanical skill, the boy seemed to have a taste for mathematics, which could be very useful to him in that profession. Then, in due time, Isaac would set up for himself and would manufacture curious clocks. Indeed, he had already made one of a kind, which nobody had ever heard of before. It was set going, not by wheels and weights, like other clocks, but by the dropping of water. This was an object of great wonderment to all the people round about. Besides the water clock, Isaac made a sundial. Thus, his grandmother was never at a loss to know the hour, for the water clock would tell it in the shade and the sundial in the sunshine. Isaac possessed an outstanding faculty of acquiring knowledge by the simplest means. For instance, to gauge the strength of the wind, he jumped against the wind, and by the length of his jump, he could calculate the force of a gentle breeze, a brisk gale, or a tempest. Thus, even in his boyish sports, he was continually searching out the secrets of philosophy. Not far from his grandmother's residence, there was a windmill, which operated on a new plan. Isaac spent many hours examining its various parts. While the mill was at rest, he pried into its internal machinery. When its broad sails were set in motion by the wind, he watched the process by which the millstones were made to revolve and crush the grain that was put into the hoppers. After gaining a thorough knowledge of its construction, he was observed to be unusually busy with his tools. He had constructed a model of the windmill. Every part of the mill and its machinery was complete. Its little sails were neatly made up of linen and whirled round very swiftly when the mill was placed in a draught of air. Even a puff of wine from Isaac's mouth or from a pair of bellows was sufficient to set the sails in motion. And what was the most curious, if a handful of grains of wheat were put into the little hopper, they would soon be converted into snow-white flour. Isaac's playmates were enchanted with his new windmill. "But, Isaac," said one of them, "you have forgotten one thing that belongs to a mill." "What is that?" asked Isaac, for he supposed that, from the roof of the mill to its foundation, he had forgotten nothing. "Why, where is the miller?" said his friend. "That is true. I must look out for one," said Isaac. He might easily have made the miniature figure of a man, but then it would not have been able to move about and perform the duties of a miller. It so happened, however, that a mouse had just been caught in the trap, and, as no other miller could be found, Mr. Mouse was appointed to that important office. The new miller made a very respectable appearance in his dark grey coat. To be sure, he had not a very good character of honesty, and was suspected of sometimes stealing a portion of the grain which was given to him to grind. As Isaac grew older, all day long, if left to himself, he was either absorbed in thought or engaged in some book of mathematics or natural philosophy. At night, he looked up with curiosity at the stars and wondered whether they were worlds like our own, and how great was their distance from the earth, and what the power that kept them in their courses was. When Isaac was 14 years old, his mother, her second husband now dead, wished her son to leave the school and assist her in managing the farm at Woolsthorpe. For a year or two, therefore, he tried to turn his attention to farming. But his mind was so bent on becoming a scholar that his mother sent him back to school, and afterwards to the University of Cambridge. The story of an apple falling led him to discover the force of gravitation which keeps the heavenly bodies in their courses. When he had once got hold of his idea, he never permitted his mind to rest until he had searched out all the laws by which the planets are guided through the sky. This he did as thoroughly as if he had gone up among the stars and tracked them in their orbits. While doing this research, he was accustomed to spending night after night in a lofty tower, gazing at the heavenly bodies through a telescope. His mind was lifted far above the things of this world. Newton lived to be a very old man and become famous. He was made a member of Parliament and received the honor of knighthood from the king. But he cared a little for earthly fame and honor and felt no pride in the vastness of his knowledge. All that he had learned only made him feel how little he knew in comparison to what remained to be known. At last, in 1727, Sir Isaac Newton died, or rather, he ceased to live on the earth. He has left fame behind him, which will be as endurable as if his name was written in the letter of light formed by the stars upon the midnight sky.